In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers entered one of the most remote regions of the Soviet Union. None of them returned alive. Weeks later, rescuers discovered their tent abandoned on the frozen slope of a mountain. Their boots were still inside. Their warm clothing was still inside. Food, equipment, and personal belongings had been left behind, and the tent itself appeared to have been cut open from the inside. Outside, a trail of footprints led away from the only shelter that could have kept them alive. Some of those who left the tent were wearing little more than socks. Others may have been barefoot. The temperature was far below freezing. Whatever happened that night, 9 experienced people made a decision that seemed impossible. They left safety behind and walked into the darkness. To understand why, we have to go back to the beginning. In January 1959, a group of young Soviet hikers prepared for an ambitious winter expedition through the northern Ural Mountains. Most of them were students or graduates of the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They were not inexperienced tourists. They were skilled hikers and skiers, familiar with severe winter conditions and demanding expeditions. The group was led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. By all accounts, Dyatlov was intelligent, disciplined, and highly experienced. The expedition originally included 10 people. Their route would take them hundreds of kilometers through snow, forests, and isolated mountain terrain. The journey was classified as one of the highest levels of difficulty available to Soviet hikers at the time. The group documented much of the expedition. They took photographs. They kept diaries. They recorded ordinary moments, meals, jokes, difficult weather, and the exhausting work of moving through deep snow. The surviving photographs do not show a group expecting disaster. They show friends, young people laughing, working, and moving deeper into the wilderness. But one member of the expedition would never reach the mountain. Yuri Yudin became ill during the journey. Suffering from severe pain, he made the difficult decision to turn back. He said goodbye to his friends and left the group. It saved his life. The remaining 9 continued north. They would never return. By the beginning of February, the hikers had moved into increasingly difficult terrain. On February 1st, worsening weather and poor visibility appear to have pushed the group away from their intended route. They eventually reached the slope of Kholat Shakal. The name is often translated as Dead Mountain. Instead of descending into the relative protection of the forest, the group made camp on the exposed slope. Exactly why they chose that location remains debated. Perhaps they did not want to lose the altitude they had gained. Perhaps the weather made navigation difficult. Whatever the reason, they cut into the snow and erected their tent. The final photographs recovered from the expedition show the group preparing the campsite. Then the record stops. Something happened during the night of February 1st and the early hours of February 2nd. No one knows the exact sequence of events. The group had been expected to send a message after completing the route. When no message arrived, there was initially little panic. Delays were not unusual on difficult winter expeditions. But as the days passed, concern grew. A search operation began. On February 26th, searchers found the tent. What they discovered would define the mystery for decades. The tent was damaged and partially covered with snow. Inside were the hikers' possessions: boots, clothing, food, equipment, items that experienced hikers would never willingly abandon in deadly winter conditions. Investigators concluded that cuts had been made in the tent fabric from the inside. The group appeared to have escaped without using the normal entrance, but there was no one there. Outside the tent, searchers found tracks leading downhill toward the forest. The footprints did not suggest a chaotic sprint. They appeared to show members of the group moving away from the tent. Some were poorly dressed for the conditions. The trail led toward a large cedar tree at the edge of the forest, more than a kilometer away. There, searchers found the remains of a small fire, and nearby, they found the first 2 bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko. Both were found near the cedar. They were inadequately dressed for the extreme cold. Branches high in the tree appeared to have been broken. Some investigators believed someone had climbed the cedar, perhaps to look back toward the tent. Between the cedar tree and the abandoned campsite, 3 more bodies were discovered: Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin. Their positions led to a disturbing possibility. After reaching the forest, some members of the group may have tried to return to the tent. They never made it. The initial evidence suggested that 5 people had died from hypothermia, although one had also suffered a skull fracture. But 4 members of the expedition were still missing. The search continued. Months passed. Then, in May, after the snow began to melt, the final 4 bodies were found beneath deep snow in a ravine. The condition of these bodies transformed an already strange tragedy into one of the most famous mysteries of the 20th century. Several had suffered severe internal injuries. Thibaut Brignol had major damage to his skull. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had devastating injuries to the chest. The force involved was significant, yet some of the bodies reportedly showed relatively limited external trauma compared with the severity of the internal injuries. This became one of the most disturbing elements of the case. Some of the group were also wearing clothing that had originally belonged to others, but this does not necessarily suggest anything mysterious. In a survival situation, the living may have taken clothing from those who had already died. Other details would later become part of the legend. Reports of missing soft tissue, claims about unusual radiation, stories of strange lights in the sky. Over time, the Dyatlov Pass incident attracted almost every imaginable theory. Secret military experiments, weapons testing, infrasound, an attack, a violent conflict within the group, unknown natural phenomena, and, inevitably, supernatural explanations. But extraordinary stories are not the same as evidence. Some disturbing details may have ordinary explanations. Bodies exposed to water, snow, animals, and months of decomposition can change dramatically. The presence of radioactive material on some clothing has also been debated for decades, but it has never provided clear proof of a secret weapon or military attack. The original Soviet investigation eventually closed the case. Its conclusion was famously vague. The hikers, investigators said, had died because of a compelling natural force which they were unable to overcome. The wording explained almost nothing, and that uncertainty allowed the mystery to grow. For decades, one of the most common explanations was an avalanche, but critics pointed to problems. The slope did not appear steep enough to many observers. The tent was not completely destroyed. Searchers did not initially report obvious evidence of a massive avalanche. And perhaps most importantly, if an avalanche forced the group to escape, why did they not return once the immediate danger had passed? In recent years, however, a more specific version of the avalanche theory has received serious scientific attention. The proposed mechanism is not a gigantic wall of snow sweeping down the mountain. It is a smaller slab avalanche. According to this explanation, the hikers cut into the snow-covered slope to create a flat platform for their tent. Strong winds may then have continued depositing snow above them. Hours later, a compact slab of snow could have broken loose and struck the campsite. If the group believed another collapse was possible, leaving the tent immediately would make sense. Damage to the entrance, darkness, confusion, and fear could explain why they cut their way out. They may have moved toward the forest for shelter. Once there, they built a fire. Some tried to climb the cedar. Some may have attempted to return to the tent. Others may have moved into the ravine to build a more protected shelter. The severe injuries found on the final 4 could potentially have resulted from heavy snow forces or a fall into the ravine. In this reconstruction, there is no monster, no secret weapon, no supernatural force, only a chain of terrible decisions made under extreme conditions. But the theory does not answer every question perfectly, and that is why the case continues to fascinate people around the world. We know where the hikers went. We know where their tent was found. We know where their bodies were discovered. We know that they were experienced, and we know that at some point during that freezing night, they believed leaving their shelter was safer than remaining inside it. That may be the most disturbing fact of all. Because the real mystery is not simply what killed them. The real mystery is what happened in those first few minutes. What did they hear? What did they see? What made 9 experienced hikers abandon boots, clothing, and shelter in temperatures that could kill them within hours? More than 6 decades later, science may have brought us closer to an answer. But no one survived the night to tell us exactly what happened. The mountain kept that final moment for itself. 9 people entered the frozen wilderness. 1 man turned back, and because he did, the world was left with photographs, diaries, memories, and a mystery. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, a Mythic File documentary. Subscribe to Mythic File and uncover the unknown.